Maurice Nicoll, Psychological Commentary, Volume 2. Based on his work with Gurdjieff, this group was conducted in Birdlip, January 7, 1945, and is titled Commentary on Memory, Part 4. The realization of this does not lead to the loss of feeling of oneself, but rather leads to the loss of the wrong feeling of oneself. Or to take the work phrase, we must realize that we are in a house in disorder and nobody is in charge. Then take the formatory part of the intellectual center, the moving part. Here lies the memory for words, phrases, all our ordinary orientation to life, small plans, catching buses, and so on. All these are different memories and subdivisions in which live different eyes that attend to these matters and have been trained to do so. Next, I want to talk to you about the memory of the higher parts of ordinary centers and how it differs from memory in smaller parts, or memory in bigger eyes in contrast to memory in smaller eyes. In the first place, it is impossible to remember oneself in small eyes, and it is merely a wise waste of time. In fact, it is worse than a waste of time because it drags the whole work down to a very small level. The work cannot fall on small eyes, which cannot understand it, and which are turned towards life and are necessary for life. So if you go about it in your daily life and simply suddenly try to remember yourself because some little parrot eye tells you to do so, one of those little nagging eyes that give you an entirely false sense of duty, then simply laugh at such nonsense. The act of self-remembering must have a certain emotional quality. It is owing to the emotional quality that one is put at once into higher parts of centers, into bigger eyes. These can remember the work. They can understand it. No one can work continuously, but only at times. But it is possible to keep awake a little all the time, and at least to observe oneself. Self-observation should accompany our ordinary life and can do so. But self-remembering is on quite a different level. Self-observation can lead up to self-remembering. When one notices one is forgetting one's aim. Now, in self-remembering, all the memory of the work enters, not necessarily consciously, but by a high level of association. Eyes that are in higher parts of centers have a far more comprehensive memory than that of little eyes that stand, as it were, close to the ground and have very limited vision. These bigger eyes can take in 2 or 3 things together and relate them because they have a wider vision. That is why the memory of these eyes is quite different. They can, as it were, take in a whole of a subject. Whereas little eyes can take in only one small part, and for this reason they continually argue inside one and catch hold of the little contradictions. It is a great misfortune to be judged by other people by little eyes, and this is, after all, the general human situation. You get into bigger eyes either through an emotional state or through attention, directed attention, which has to deal with the work ideas, can put you into an emotional state, or even a book that contains B influences. This makes it possible to remember yourself because it puts you into a chain of conscious associations, voluntarily acquired, or rather acquired by choice. Here the memory of everything is quite different because everything is in the right order. It is a very wonderful thing when this begins to happen. That is when you begin to touch real self-remembering. Of course, if you worry about self-remembering or do it as your duty merely, you will not reach this state because you start from the wrong place. It is the whole feeling of the work that makes it possible to remember oneself. And it is also the whole memory of the work that makes it possible. But this memory is not the same as ordinary memories. We use it for life. It is like going into another room. If there is nothing there, there can be no self-remembering in a real sense. If you remember your origin and feel it emotionally enough, you may touch the level of self-remembering, and then you may remember many other things that long ago you have forgotten. This is special memory because where things are joined together by similar emotional states, by a similar taste. And here you often find many things that you may have thought have been no good, things you have tried to do, things you thought you had failed in. You find them there in this special memory, but you cannot find nothing there that you thought you did well and deserved credit for. Remember that each center feels, and that every division of a center feels, and that all these feelings are quite different qualities and call up their memories. This is why so much instance is laid on evaluation of the work, because evaluation is a feeling, and it is through feeling the work that we get into contact with eyes in ourselves and can work and can self-remember and can lead to the state of self-remembering. Feeling for the work develops through feeling when you have wrong feelings about the work. No one can feel rightly, but people can become more conscious of when they feel wrongly. By inner separation, by non-identifying, by disliking or wrong feelings or discomfort about them, it may be made impossible for right feelings to enter. When we have experienced some emotions, some moments of right feeling, we remember them, and afterwards in ordinary life in an inverse way, namely through feeling that we have not got the right feelings. This action of memory is the most interesting of all. If we were not given occasionally inner perceptions and experiences a little above our ordinary level, the point is, we do actually have traces of experiences beyond our ordinary level. This is one of the most remarkable things about our human existence and points to our having something more in us than we think we are. If you will think of the side octave from the sun, you will see the explanation. Now you will see why. And the work memory is taken as one of the most important of all things, and why the purification is so important. To keep the memory of useless things alive is not the right use of memory. Memory must become selective. On one occasion, Mr. Ouspensky, in speaking of what he would ask for if he had 3 wishes, said, one thing would be to be able to forget what I would like to forget and to remember what I want to remember. Now, we forget things by reducing their importance, and we remember things by increasing their importance. Some things we must strive in ourselves and observe some things that we must feed. And the work teaches us what we have to starve and what we have to feed. But one of the most important ways of altering memory is by canceling debts, through seeing the unpleasant things we attribute to others as also existing in ourselves. And this is one of the great uses of self-observation. This checks the growth of unpleasant memories and also changes us. This kind of work on yourself is always possible at any moment, wherever you are, and begin as soon as you reach the state of being, able to notice when you're taking in unpleasant impressions, either from the outside or from memory.